project you're trying to push forward with, what you're learning through this program. Would just love to know what you're applying this to so that I can tailor my answers to your questions just a little bit better. So I'll wait for a moment until people start introducing themselves in the chat. I'll just say, hi, I'm Madelaine. I'm Giving Tuesday. And then hopefully you guys can write in the chat. You see, this is also a measure to see and make sure that we're all engaged as we start through this session, because otherwise I'm just going to be talking to myself. So please do write in the chat your name and what's your project? What are you working on? What are you applying the knowledge from this program to? I'll give you guys a minute. Hi, Fola or Anu, if you guys are there, do you mind just giving me then a little bit of a summary of the, there we go, of the cohort. I see Eniola wrote, and she's the founder of EME Foundation. Very nice.
So guys, we're waiting for you to introduce yourself. We have a number of us here, so can you introduce yourself in the chat?
Lovely. Now we're getting to it. Okay. We have someone who's looking to empower women and children from underserved communities. Lovely. We have someone focused on quality education. Okay, some more youth work. Equipping teachers. Yes. Lovely. Ectodermal dysplasia, radio TV host. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, please keep them coming, but this does give me a little bit of an overview of who I'm talking to. So thank you so much for taking the time to introduce yourselves, even though I know you all know each other already. So, as I said, my name is Madelaine. I would love to just share with you guys a little bit about the Giving Tuesday movement and how we work with leaders around the world, like Folakemi in Nigeria, before I go into sort of just answering the questions that you all sent in. I do want to clarify, even though I do have your questions from ahead, if there's anything that you get curious about throughout this session, please write the question in the chat. No problem. I'd much rather take the questions that you have right now and that you want to discuss than just sort of like talking into the universe and saying whatever. So yes, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. I'm sure at this point of the program, you all have heard a ton about the Giving Tuesday movement. And I guess I'll just give you a bit of a refresher specifically on our value, which is central to the movement, and it's what keeps it moving, which is distributed leadership. So just briefly, the Giving Tuesday movement started in 2012 as an idea of why isn't there a day when we all give? It was rooted at the time in the American culture of celebrating days like Black Friday and Cyber Monday, which are days where companies and retailers create sales for people to consume more, right? And it kicks off sort of like the holiday season. However, and as you all know, in many of our countries, the holiday season also has a ton to do with giving, right? So someone quite literally said, after both of those days, Black Friday and Cyber Monday, why isn't there a third day when instead of consuming, we are giving? So that was a simple idea. All these years later, it has turned into something so much greater. It doesn't just happen on the day, although the day is still the anniversary of the movement. So on the day, we make sure that everyone around the world is doing something celebrating giving, right? We all come together with our different activities from around the world. It's not just led in the US. Naturally, we are now in over 100 countries where they don't celebrate Black Friday or Cyber Monday, but they do want to have that day of giving. And the understanding is that it's not the only day of giving that these countries or cultures or groups of people have. But what is special about it is that it's the day that, in addition to the other giving days their communities might celebrate, this one is being celebrated with the rest of the world. Right? So we are able to say and share that whatever you are doing, whatever we are doing, it's all happening at the same time and creating this mass level of awareness for giving. Okay. We celebrate all kinds of giving on the day and year round. Monetary, of course, but most importantly, we celebrate how people give their time, how people give their treasure, right? What they know, their skills, how people give their voice, how they advocate for something, like someone said in the chat. That's giving, right? You're standing up for something, you're raising up your voice. So we celebrate all kinds of giving. And while there's no registration to participate of Giving Tuesday, you are all getting such hands-on experience on community building and campaign development that we would love to see that happen on Giving Tuesday and other days of the year, as well as for your organizations, of course. I mentioned value earlier, which is distributed leadership. Very simply put, it's the understanding that in order to grow this movement, we can't work top down by us at the office telling you what to do. That doesn't work, right? So distributed leadership calls out hand raisers, people that are so interested in doing this work, people like Folakemi, who ask themselves, well, how can I not just run my activities, which is great, how can I bring this to Nigeria, which is beautiful, but also how can I help build more leaders, right? How can I help more people gain skills? And that's precisely why you're here today, because you are now a part of a cohort of people that not just led by Folakemi. She just had the idea and is running with it and is doing an amazing job. But now you are learning from each other. You're learning from all of the mentors that you're getting. You're learning from all of the sessions. And hopefully, eventually, you will also ask yourself, not just how am I doing with my organization, how am I doing with my Giving Tuesday campaign, and how to make that better, but you're also asking, how am I helping build other leaders in the social impact space, in my community? And just so you know, we don't always mean these formal scenarios where you're in a cohort and there's curricula. We don't always mean that, right? There's plenty of informal learning that can happen that is heavily impactful in someone's development as well. Thank you to everyone who's been introducing themselves. I've been reading them while I'm talking. So that's a brief on the Giving Tuesday movement. If that sparked any questions, please let me know. But otherwise, I'm happy to go into the questions that you sent in. Give me 1 second. I have them here by me. Okay, so one of the first questions, and again, if you guys want to ask anything, please let me know. I'm just looking for this to be as interactive as possible and for you to get as much from it as you can. But I also know it's being recorded. People might be at work. So if you want to listen to this later, that also works. And if you're listening to the recording, Hi, I see you. Okay, so the first question that I received was, what are some ways in which Giving Tuesday keeps its global alumni connected and working together? I love that question, and I love that whoever thought about that is thinking about that already, because that is precisely how we work. There's a couple of things that we do. So, first and foremost, we make sure that you are all connected to other leaders in your country, right? So you are not the only grassroots leaders or people leading amazing organizations that are also interested in Giving Tuesday in Nigeria, right? So through our work with Full Academy, we make sure that you are all integrated into your local Giving Tuesday network. Second layer of that is being integrated into the regional network. We do have a hub or an office in Africa, and they run their own set of activities that are specific to grassroots leaders in the region. They also run them in different languages. So that's the next level. There is also a WhatsApp group with all of our alumni, which you will be invited to join by the end of your program. And on top of the WhatsApp group, there's also a directory. So you can actually find and flip through the directory and find everyone who's done Starling throughout the years across the world and find them based on the themes that they are interested in. I'm looking at my notes to make sure I don't miss anything that I want to tell you about this. There's other ways. Yeah. I think the most important thing I wanted to share about this is that for us, alumni are not just alumni. They're not just people that pass through our program and that's in the past, right? You all will choose essentially how you want to engage with us, right? There's things that we program and design for alumni and opportunities, and we give, if we learn more about what you do, you may get a speaking opportunity to share that at a different stage, or you may be invited to a call with the rest of the community to learn more about something like fundraising or partnerships or things that we all need to learn in this space. So there's the learning component. And then there's the other kind of engagement, which is depending on what you want to do, right? And I'm sure you'll get to it by the end of this program. But there's different kinds and types of leaders within the Giving Tuesday movement. We have country leaders, which you are all working with one right now, as I mentioned. But we also have community leaders. Community leaders are people that say, hey, I think I can lead something in my own local community. And they bring people together and organize an activity that is in benefit of solving an issue that their community has, right? In support of a cause that their community is passionate about. So if you wanted to do that, there's a whole other set of programming that you would have access to because you are now a community leader, right? So we would put you in touch with other community leaders around the world. And then lastly, if you work with youth, if you yourself are a young adult, for example, and you would like to bring together more youth around this concept of giving is what's going to make our communities change, and therefore we have to get creative and smart about how we give and do it together, right? So that would be called a Spark chapter. Nigeria has a couple of them, and that's a whole other way that you would be able to interact with the movement and other programming that you would access, and therefore also be connected with those kinds of leaders within the movement. So in summary, there's plenty of connection. Most of it is online. However, because in Nigeria, there are more of you, there might be an in-person opportunity, but that's for Full Academy to decide. Don't take my word for it. So yes, Full Academy and Anu will make sure that you are all brought into this beautiful, beautiful community by the end of this program. So that was the first question. The second question, or I should say, pause to see if anyone wants to write a question in the chat. Anything that I said sparked an additional question, a tea break for myself. Okay, I will keep going. So the next question I received was around what new technologies is Giving Tuesday using to improve campaign reach and digital philanthropy, especially in areas with growing digital access. If the person who wrote this question is here, thank you. Such a thoughtful question. There's a couple of things I want to point out. There's the how we're using technologies to reach and improve digital philanthropy. And then there's the campaign reach. So I'll just sort of like break those two down. On the side of digital philanthropy, the biggest thing I want to point out to you all is that in addition to being a movement of grassroots leaders around the world, like I just explained, we also have something really, really cool called the Giving Tuesday Data Commons. If you haven't heard of the Giving Tuesday Data Commons, it's all right. And I'm going to tell you about it right now. It's an online comprehensive philanthropic data ecosystem. Those were a lot of words. So I'm going to break that down for you in a second. It's essentially a space online designed for nonprofits, for donors, for researchers to share insights and strategies that are working or that they are discovering around giving from all around the world. And therefore, it helps them amplify the efforts of everyone who is doing giving work around the world. What does that look like? It looks like research projects that people get to collaborate on and connect in the platform because perhaps they wouldn't have known each other otherwise. It looks like free access to all of this data, right? Very easy to search. You can search for key terms. You can search for your country. You can search for whatever you're looking for. It's not quite like Google, right? Because things are vetted as they get inputted into the platform. So it's not like you'll find everything that's out there in the world, but rather everything that these nonprofits, donors, and researchers have brought into the platform. We have so many collaborators. We have, I believe it's like over 1,000 collaborators in the data commons. So that's one way that we not just access, but improve digital philanthropy. It's through analysis. It's through learning what's working and what's not. And just something for food for thought that I wanted to share with you guys is it's so common to hear and see in the private sector. It's so common to see them running studies on how to get people to buy more, how to get people to do whatever the company wants them to do, right? It's so common to see studies about marketing, but there's for some weird reason, there's this understanding or like shared common sense that because we do social work that is helping people's lives and we have the best intentions and the best heart that's enough. And that we shouldn't just learn, or I should say that we shouldn't come together as a sector and learn how to do that better, how to get people to give more, what makes people give. So at Giving Tuesday, because we are trying to unlock as much giving as possible, we love doing this kind of research and sharing it freely with anyone who's interested so that everyone who's involved in the sector can do it better and can also help us in achieving this goal of unlocking as much giving as possible. So that's one side of that question. The other side of the question, which has to do with improving campaign reach, is actually very interesting because this is where that buzzword that I taught you all 10 minutes ago about distributed leadership comes into play. Because at the moment, the global movement itself, we haven't created partnerships with particular technology platforms for various reasons, because it's very rare to find something that would work for every single person in the movement, right? What we all have in common is that we love giving and we want more of that. But that's very far from having consensus on a particular technology that would work for everyone. So what ends up happening, which is what I wanted to point out with this question, what ends up happening is our country leaders, our community leaders, but for the most part, our country leaders, they establish relationships with technology platforms in their countries that are popular in their countries, to get them to activate on Giving Tuesday. Now, when I say get them to activate, there's different ways that can happen. Of course, we can talk about companies donating money or maybe doing a volunteering activity. But what I do want to point out is when country leaders get companies and technology platforms specifically to join their campaign in a creative way. So I have a couple of stories to share very quickly. One of them is that in Singapore, our leaders there said, well, people here are all about AI. They're all about AI right now. Everyone's talking about AI. Everyone wants to do a company with AI. So they said, well, how can we involve this new technology in our campaign in a way that will be exciting and enticing for people? So they decided that they were going to leave cards on different cafes in their local community, asking people to put Post-its on the wall, which they also left, with words that they associated with giving. So they were just like, what does giving make you think? Right? Write a word, put it on the wall. And what they did was they collected all of those words from all of those cafes, and they had AI create a word cloud of what giving makes people think about in Singapore. So they used the technology so creatively, right? Because they could have said, well, we're just going to talk about the impact of AI on the social impact space. It's okay if they would have done that, but I thought that that was really creative on their part. One more story. In Poland, our leaders are connected to a donation platform there. Typically, all they do is they say, well, nonprofits, come to our platform, run your campaigns, and we get a portion of the money. But they decided to play with the platform a little bit and use them as a strategic partner in their campaign. And they got them to design a feature where people, when you were sending people money, they would give you like fake $10, right? Or whatever their local currency is, I guess 10 euros. And you would be able to send that to, like, it would take you to a nonprofit directory and you would be able to send to someone, right? But that was funny money, right? It wasn't real money, but it was getting people to practice that part of giving. So what they found was that by giving people that opportunity, many people chose to pay the 10 euro to actually get sent to a nonprofit because they were first given this opportunity to sort of like play with it in the platform. That was really, really fun. And then lastly, then you have, for example, apps, right? App companies that say, well, how can we get creative around Giving Tuesday? We don't just want to write a check. I love that. The last example I'll give for now is there's this app that helps you buy groceries and they get delivered to your doorstep. But it's not specific to a specific store. They just send people to whatever store you choose, buy the things, and bring them to your home. So on Giving Tuesday, they said, okay, what if while people are shopping for their own food, what if we give them the option to also buy someone a meal? And they found it, again, similar to the Polish example, they found that by making it convenient and by making it part of the process of what people were already doing in their platform and not asking them to go to a different platform or to a different link to go do it, people responded really well to it and they really appreciate it. And maybe that's the flip side to all this is you as a leader get an amazing campaign. That's great. Them as companies get to engage their consumers in a different way. They get to say to their consumers, we don't just care about the bottom line, we care about the local communities that you and your loved ones are in, right? By saying, we're going to build the feature, we're going to put the option, we're going to connect with the nonprofits, right? It's a ton of work, but it really pays off and ultimately makes people give more, okay? Again, going to pause. If you have any additional questions, please put them in the chat. You'll hear me say that throughout the session. And if what I said sparked any additional questions, please let me know. Just a quick break in between questions. Bola, are you still there? Is someone listening? Are we good?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
Okay, good. It's just because I'm the only one on camera, so I'm like, okay, I'll just talk to myself. Beautiful, beautiful. Someone asked about the movement's global reach. And they said, how do you access an effective campaign in various cultural and economic contexts? And the follow-up question was also great. How do you tailor strategies to address the unique challenges and opportunities in each region? What a great question. Because that's specifically what I do alongside all of our teams and our leaders. I want to start from the point or the understanding that within the movement and within the organization, we believe that local people are local to their problems and they're local to their solutions. Local people are the experts of their locality. Okay. So from that standpoint, all we do with the movement is we observe what works in multiple places, right? Something happens in one country, then maybe another country hears about it and tries it. By the third time someone's kind of picking up the idea, we start saying, okay, maybe there's something here. And then we go to the next phase, which is bringing it either to our regional teams. As I mentioned, we do have an Africa hub led by a wonderful leader, Catherine. And in places where we don't have a hub, we come directly to our country leaders and we say, here's what's worked. How can this be applied to your local context? So that's the first sort of like step, is taking in as much data as we can from all of you. And that's not hard data, right? That could be anecdotally, that could be soft data, right? You could say, well, I know it says in this research paper that people in my country are XYZ, but I know my people. They use these apps, they go to these places, and if they want to give, they give to the church. Whatever it is, right? So we trust that you know better. Then what we do is, as you're growing your campaigns, I did this a little bit earlier, just a tiny bit, but we start sharing with all of you different strategies that have worked for people around the world that may be in similar scenarios, right? We look at countries, for example, that are in conflict. They don't all have to do the same thing, but if it worked in one, it might work for the others. We look for countries of a similar size, right? Where if you have, I don't know, 50 million people in your country, the idea that worked there may not work for a smaller country. And vice versa, something that worked in a smaller country may not be quite able to be scaled in a bigger country. So that's sort of what we look at from the beginning. I did want to share one example of how that looks in the real world out with our leaders. So the Giving Tuesday Hub in Africa was established around 2 years ago at this point, if I'm not mistaken. And at that point, the Giving Tuesday movement had been around for 9 years. I think that's how the math works. Yeah, 8 or 9 years. And one of the campaigns that had worked in many different places across many different circumstances and contexts was a campaign that's called My Giving Story. My Giving Story, very, very simply put, is a campaign that encourages people to post online about what or who they give to and why they do it. And the campaign is designed to get to the heart of not just telling people, go give, but rather highlighting the fact that people already give. And that it may not be something that they talk about openly. It may not be something that they talk to their friends about because it's just what they do in their personal time, right? So we're sort of like taking away the stigma of talking about it, or taking away this like hidden aspect of it and bringing it to the front and asking them to post it on social media. Some people have done it where they have like banners that you can put on your picture so it all looks the same. But in essence, that's what it is. And it's been ran in over 20 countries in so many different ways. Now, remember that I said the My Giving Story campaign gets at the heart of people are already giving, right? Not this assumption that we need to do education for people to learn how to give. When it came to designing the first couple of projects and programs that the Africa Hub would run specifically, that notion that this particular region is incredibly generous came to the limelight again, right? As they were designing it and as they said, well, what's going to get people excited about this movement here, especially because it may be slightly newer for some people, the team said, there's so many different traditions in African communities and African countries and tribes that go back centuries, that instead of creating this beautiful communicational campaign about what Giving Tuesday is and how you should join, all of that is happening. In tandem with that, we also brought a project that's called the World Giving Library. The World Giving Library is a digital space where we are looking to collect the biggest amount of giving traditions in the world. So we brought that and we created that with our partners in Africa. It exists for the rest of the world as well. But at the moment, we have about 20 articles that are centered in the African perspectives of giving, with a focus on organic narratives, practices, and as I said, traditions. This work is led by one of our partners, Trust Africa, and I wanted to share it because I think it's a beautiful way of taking something that worked, right? My Giving Story. And My Giving Story has been ran in plenty of African countries too, let me be clear. But as we were designing something larger to communicate to the whole region that the Giving Tuesday movement was here and that it was to work hand in hand with the work that all of you already do, we went back to this knowledge of what worked, which was loosely that if you celebrate the ways in which people are already generous, that gets them talking and that gets them moving even more. That gets them connecting with each other around this notion that, oh yeah, you are right. We do give money to cooperatives when needed. We do share with our neighbors when they are in need, right? So these very simple ways, but ways that we don't talk about, ways that are not codified, nor should they be, I'm not saying they should be prescriptive of, well, now this is how we have to give, but rather of saying giving is not anything new. I hope that this is all also giving you food for thought for your own campaigns, right? How when you ask for people to give, you don't want to just say, well, I need this from you, right? You want to talk about the impact that if that person collaborates with you, giving whatever you're requesting, now you are jointly creating an impact in your community. I'll pause there before answering the last couple of questions that I received from all of you. If you have any additional questions, put them in the chat. Take a break.
Hi,
Hello.
Madelaine. Good
Hi.
afternoon. This is Anu. I'm sorry I can't put on my video right now. I hope that's fine.
No worries.
All right. So thank you so much. I have been listening. I've just been unable to speak. I'm sure that fellows would have a couple of questions, but I just wanted to slide in and just encourage them to ask questions that they might have regarding Giving Tuesday and regarding their work generally and regarding what they've seen on your profile. So hi guys, good afternoon and thank you for joining everyone. Please do ask your questions. You want to know maybe the future, what it looks like hosting campaigns being a part of the movement, even in Nigeria. She mentioned Spark, she mentioned, community leadership. You want to learn more about these things, about how it benefits maybe directly your work. She has mentioned some strategies working with brands. If you have questions, please go ahead and ask. Preferably, you can raise your hand now, so that by the time she's done with the last set of questions, we can just take that in. Yes, but would of course appreciate questions. In fact, we must ask questions. I'm sorry, before we leave here. So thank you. Thank you, Madeleine. I'll allow you continue, and we'll see if we have any questions come up.
Thank you, Anu. I really appreciate you coming on to encourage them to ask questions, because this is the time that we have to be live. I won't go away. You can ask questions later on. Anu and Full Academy know how to contact me, and they will also have answers to your questions, but we do want to make the most of our time together today. So I'll give answers to the last two questions briefly so that we do have time in case there's a couple of questions that come up from you guys now. The second to last question was around how does Giving Tuesday navigate and leverage relationships with governments and government entities in different countries to create enabling environments for philanthropic initiatives? Now that's a big question, right? Because we are in such a fraught moment with governments, not just locally where I live, but I think if you look around, there's contested and complex relationships between a country's people and its government everywhere you look. So I want to start with saying that because that is the preface to saying the Giving Tuesday movement does not have official partnerships with any governments. Having said that, I want to go back to the point I made earlier about local people being the experts. And you'll hear me say that many times because that's really also personally how I approach this work. What does happen, even though we as a movement and as an organization don't have specific partnerships with governments and countries, our leaders do. Because our leaders, are better suited to navigate the complexities of the perceptions that people have of governments, right? This doesn't happen in places where governments are seen to be the oppressors of the very people and the very practices that we are trying to celebrate, right? If the government is responsible for closing down the civic space in a specific country, it would be very odd for a country leader to want to build a partnership with the government. Let's just put it that way. So what does happen is that through our local partners, as I mentioned, country leaders, community leaders, they establish relationships and ultimately build partnerships, less so with governments as a whole, right? Like we signed an agreement with the government of so-and-so, but rather with agencies within the government, within their local governments that would be relevant to activities they are running. So for example, if a leader is running a sports activity with youth, they might be in contact with whatever the relevant ministry is in their country. Maybe it's the Ministry of Youth and Family. Maybe it's the Ministry of Sports and Health. Maybe it's the Ministry of Social Development. Depending on the kind of, maybe it's the Department of Education, if they're trying to do work around supporting teachers in teaching giving to young people. We have some leaders that have created curricula to share with schools. So it's only natural to go to the Ministry of Education because it gives them a couple of things. And I don't just mean the education department, but rather building partnerships with local agencies. It gives them a couple of things. It gives them visibility because automatically you're going to have them as a partner who's going to write about it in their newsletter or in the public gazette or in the media, whatever it is, they're going to highlight that they're doing this. And that's going to get a whole other set of eyeballs that perhaps you wouldn't have gotten. It is also, I'll read my notes. It's also going to give them access, right? Many of these agencies are in charge of running public spaces, right? Maybe they have soccer fields that you can use. Maybe they have a public square that you can get a permit to use for a nonprofit fair. Maybe they have access to schools if that's what you're trying to work with. Personal advice, don't go work with schools if you don't have a personal connection to it. Don't rely on just like, I'm going to go to the Department of Education and they're going to bring me to every school. It's not quite that simple in many countries. So unless you are an educator or you have a way of connecting with youth that is natural to what you already do, think about it twice. But if you do have that access, it can be further amplified by connecting with the Department of Education in your country, for example. And then the last thing I want to point out is that even though we don't build partnerships with governments, we do encourage our country leaders and our communities to approach their heads of state, approach their heads of government, their governors, whatever the structure may look like locally, and request that they make a proclamation or a statement on Giving Tuesday. Now, you may be wondering, well, didn't you just say that you don't build partnerships with government because they could be seen as contentious? Or yes, right? But there's a difference between working with someone and asking them to say, giving is not a bipartisan issue. It's not even a partisan issue. It should not be polarizing. We should be able to say, at least for one day of the whole year, we should be able to say, giving to our communities in this country is important. Happy Giving Tuesday, everyone. And you're probably also thinking, well, Madelaine, how do you get a president, a governor, a prime minister, a lawmaker? We have outreach materials, so you don't have to go write it on your own. But most importantly, it's about building relationships. It's about building relationships each year. We have a ton of governments that do it each year because they've just done it every year for a long time now. And when our leaders are trying to approach new ones, they always focus on saying this is going to support the third sector in our country. And more governments are aware, that the third sector fills in the gaps of where they don't. They know that, so you may not lead with that in conversation, but they know that. So it is really beautiful to see on the big day, governments from left, right, and center coming out and saying, giving matters, giving is quintessential to who we are as a people. And they do so in many ways. They write it in their public gazette. Maybe they just write on Twitter, on X. Maybe they make a post on Facebook. It can be as formal or informal as possible. It could be a letter. It could be a video. And if you're really, really close with the official who's helping you get this, we also encourage them to tell their own giving story, right? To the point of the things that work, the campaigns that work. We make them do my giving story. We make them tell a little story of when was the last time they gave, when was a time that they gave and it was impactful in their lives. Because again, they're just people that we are choosing to help represent us in government. So lastly, very quickly, please drop your questions in the chat. We have about 10 minutes left. And I have one more question that I'm going to answer, and then we can sort of like answer any questions in the moment. So someone asked, and this is slightly less related to Giving Tuesday, so that's why I left it for last, but someone did ask for advice. What advice would I give to organizations or individuals that are looking to start their own nonprofit, their own NGO in their own community or country? And it's funny because I was super prepared to talk about Giving Tuesday, and this one kind of like took me out. And so I had to think for a second in all my years in the social impact sector, what I've seen works, what I've seen be lessons that take people a long time to learn. So if the person who asked this question is here, open up your ears. And I hope that this advice also helps others in their own projects and in existing things that you're already working on. So a couple of things come to mind. Number one, find what's your differentiator. There's a lot of NGOs, they all deserve to exist, but in order for you to find the best way to be sustainable, you're going to really need to have a good grasp on what kind of impact you want to create. What are the different ways that that impact can happen? And this is crucial. This is crucial because if you think there's only one way of achieving what you want to achieve, you're going to be so disappointed if you don't get to do it that one way. So from the beginning, I would encourage you to explore what are the many different ways that we can reach that same goal, right? That same target. And then create levels, right? If I had nothing, how would I try to achieve it? If I had a little bit more, how would I try to achieve it? And if I had everything I thought I needed, how would I go about achieving it? And I think the mistake that many of us make is that we only focus in this level, right? We make the budget and we say, if I don't have this, I'm not doing anything. Which brings me to my next quick point, which is don't let what you have or don't have to start your nonprofit define what you can or cannot do. And this is so quintessential to how campaign leaders, community leaders in our network approach their work. Sometimes they are super well resourced and sometimes they're not, but they don't let that define what they can and cannot do on Giving Tuesday because they get creative about the different ways that they could get what they need. People always come to me and they say, how do I raise funds for my campaign? And I ask them, what do you need the funds for? Not because I'm challenging them. I want them to be resourced, but because I want them to think creatively of what is it they actually need the resources for and how can they get it. The example of the campaign where they're doing a soccer event with youth. Someone told me, I need money to make this event happen. And I said, what do you need it for? And they said, well, I want to get the kids t-shirts and I want to get them water bottles. Makes sense. I love that idea. What if instead of asking for money, you go to companies that sell water bottles, small companies, big companies, whatever it is. And instead of saying, I need X amount of local currency, right? You just ask and you explain, I'm doing this really fun activity with the kids, celebrating Giving Tuesday. It's a global movement. You would be a part of global partners that we have, so on and so forth. I need 3,000 water bottles. They have the water bottles. They may not have the money to give to you, but you don't actually need the money. You need the bottles. So that's just, again, an exercise in resourcing and not letting thinking that you don't have what you need deter or define what you can and cannot do. One more thought is, if you're not good at it, get great at telling your impact story. I cannot stress this enough. A lot of having a nonprofit is not just having it and registering. It's what comes after, which is selling the vision. Selling the vision of what you and your organization uniquely want to create in your community, because you're not the only ones that want to create a better future for your people. So getting really good at telling the impact story. If you have any sort of success story, how do you package that in a way that doesn't just say, well, we did this great thing and we did it once, and maybe if you gave me some money, I would do it again. This is sort of like fundraising 101, right? It's framing that success story as just a drop in the bucket of what you could do by unlocking more giving from this person. On the flip side, you also need strategic partners to make your activities happen, because you will have the resources, hopefully, and then how do you do them? So you also have to sell the vision to those people. So getting great at telling your impact story is amazing. And then lastly, because I see there have not been any additional questions sent in the chat, so I'll share one more point for this one. I'm going to echo my own point that I made earlier around the fact that we think that having a great heart and an amazing intention is enough to be successful in the social impact sector. Many people can run with that and they will be successful, right? But when you're talking about something more structured, like creating a nonprofit, which, by the way, you don't have to, right? There's plenty that you can do in the informal giving space, which is where we at Giving Tuesday thrive. We thrive in the in between of you have a nonprofit or you don't. You are an organization, but you want to do something as an individual, right? So just know that you don't even have to do this. However, if you choose that that's the path for you, for your cause, for the people that you might have already garnered around that particular cause and what you want to do, my last point and suggestion and advice would be to surround yourself and your organization with people that have the best intentions, as well as people that have the know-how. Hopefully you find people that have both of those things, and it's a perfect marriage and a perfect sort of like synergy with that person. But that's going to avoid you many headaches. Because if you yourself are not a nonprofit professional, that's okay. That should not hold you back from starting a nonprofit. But it cannot be a learning exercise for everyone involved. It cannot be that everyone who's involved has no idea what they're doing, because it would be like the blind leading the blind, right? And there's plenty you can learn online for free. And if that's the case, and you say, well, I have a group of 10 people that are super excited about this, but none of us are nonprofit professionals, then I would actually recommend on investing, and I don't mean monetarily necessarily, could be just investing your time together to learn some best practices, to access a masterclass, a webinar, read a book together, whatever it is, do some sort of learning exercise before jumping into it. Because you will find yourself saying, oh, this is a great way of thinking about it. But you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know unless you access that knowledge somehow, because you yourself don't have it. So with that said, I want to thank you all for your time. I want to thank you all for taking your own time to participate of the Starling Collective all throughout these weeks. I really hope that what I've shared today has given you some food for thought. Sorry, has given you some food for thought, both in the Giving Tuesday space, but also outside of it, and related to everything that you do in your day-to-day. I really, really appreciate all the work that you do. I saw some of the introductions. You are an amazing bunch. And I hope that you continue to learn from each other. And as I said, I'm not going away forever. If you have any questions, if you're going for a walk tomorrow or taking a shower and you say, oh, I wish I asked this, please contact Anu. She'll make sure that I get the question and that we set up some time to chat. I'm always here for all of you, and thank you so much. Anu, I don't know if you need to share anything with them before we wrap up today.
Thank you so much, Madeleine. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for all the insights that you have shared. So I believe that I'll always definitely reach out to you if we have any questions, or if anyone maybe has a more personal question and would like to reach out. Would it be okay to share your email so that they can contact?
Absolutely. I'm
Okay.
putting my email in the chat right now. Oh, sorry, Fola, go ahead.
Okay. So just to be sure, do we have any questions? Any last minute question? Like Madeleine said, it just popped up. It's fine to ask now. If we don't, then we can then call it in the afternoon. Okay. So yes, she's dropped her email in the chat. So just in case you want to reach out, please do so. You can also let me know so that I can follow up from our end as well. So thank you, everyone. Yes, Madeleine, you have lots of thank yous in the chat. Thank you for your time. We sincerely appreciate you. Thank you, everyone, for joining as well. I trust, of course, from the feedback, I can tell that We had a very insightful session. We'll share the recordings and we'll share the attendance on the group chat after now. So thank you. Do have a lovely afternoon. Bye.
Bye, everyone. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do on Giving Tuesday. I'll see you all. Bye.
Bye-bye.